November 24th, 1943, Texas. A metal tray slides across a cafeteria counter. On it sits a slice of roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, and something that makes German prisoner of war Helga Schroeder freeze in terror. A dark red gelatinous mass that looks exactly like congealed blood. Around her, whispers spread like wildfire among the female prisoners. Is this how America treats its enemies? By feeding them raw animal remains? What the women don't know is that they're about to discover the truth behind one of the strangest cultural misunderstandings of World War II. The prisoner of war camp sits 15 miles outside of Austin, Texas, surrounded by barbed wire and watchtowers. Unlike the horror stories told by Nazi propaganda, this place operates under the strict guidelines of the Geneva Convention. Every prisoner receives the same quality food as American soldiers. But for Helga Schroeder and the other German women held here, nothing about America makes sense anymore. Helga arrived at the camp 3 weeks ago. Her hospital ship had been intercepted in the Atlantic. She'd spent years believing what the Reich told her. Americans were barbaric gangsters, a mongrel nation without culture or honor. Now she sits on a narrow bunk in Barrack C staring at the wooden ceiling, trying to reconcile propaganda with reality. The bunks are clean. The blankets are thick. Nobody has beaten her. Nobody has starved her. This confuses Helga more than cruelty would have. She was trained to expect brutality. Kindness feels like a trap. Across from her, Ilse Weber polishes her boots with methodical precision. Even as a prisoner, Ilse maintains the rigid discipline of a German officer. Her gray hair is pulled back so tightly it seems to stretch her face. Her eyes are cold, calculating. Ilse doesn't speak much, but when she does, her words carry the weight of absolute certainty. She still believes in the cause. She still believes Germany will win. And she especially believes that American hospitality is nothing more than psychological warfare. The youngest prisoner in their barracks is Liesel Hoffmann, barely 19 years old. She'd been a secretary at a military installation in North Africa when Allied forces captured her. Now she cries quietly at night, clutching a photograph of her family in Munich. Helga tries to comfort her. But what comfort can one prisoner offer another? The camp holds 47 German women. Most are nurses, clerical workers, or communications officers captured in various theaters of war. They live separately from the male prisoners, guarded primarily by the Women's Army Corps. Sergeant Dorothy Hayes runs their section with firm but fair authority. She's a stocky woman with auburn hair and a no-nonsense attitude shaped by 3 years of military service. Dorothy doesn't hate the German women. She pities them. To her, they're victims of a terrible ideology, trapped in a war they never chose. But Dorothy also doesn't trust them. Not yet. Trust is earned, and these women still carry the poison of Nazi indoctrination. She sees it in the way some of them look at Corporal Walter Brown, the black soldier who works in the kitchen. She sees it in their shocked faces when they realize that in America, a black man can wear the same uniform as a white officer. The irony isn't lost on Dorothy. Here she is, enforcing Geneva Convention rights for enemy prisoners while her own country practices segregation. Walter can cook food for German POWs, but can't eat at most restaurants in downtown Austin. The contradiction burns in Dorothy's chest, but she keeps it to herself. You don't question these things out loud. Not in 1943. The days follow a strict routine. Morning roll call at 6, breakfast at 7, work assignments at 8. The women perform light labor, laundry, mending uniforms, gardening. Nothing that contributes directly to the war effort. The Geneva Convention forbids that. Lunch at noon. More work until 4. Dinner at 6. Lights out at 9. Helga finds the routine almost comforting. It gives structure to the chaos her life has become. She works in the camp infirmary, assisting the American medical staff. The head doctor, Captain Morrison, treats her with professional respect. He asks about her training, compliments her technique, even listens to her suggestions. This too confuses Helga. Why would the enemy value her opinion? One afternoon in early November, Dorothy makes an announcement during roll call. Her breath creates small clouds in the cold Texas morning. The prisoners stand in neat rows, their thin coats pulled tight against the wind. Thanksgiving is coming, Dorothy explains. It's an American holiday, a day of gratitude, and according to military regulations, all personnel, including prisoners of war, will receive a traditional Thanksgiving meal. The German women exchange confused glances. They've never heard of this holiday. Ilsa's expression hardens with suspicion. Another American trick, she mutters to the woman beside her. They're trying to make us grateful for our imprisonment. But Liesel's eyes brighten with curiosity. What kind of food? She asks quietly. Dorothy smiles. Turkey, she says. Mashed potatoes, stuffing, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie. The same meal American families eat across the country. The word cranberry means nothing to the German women. The fruit doesn't exist in Europe. They have no reference point for what Dorothy is describing. But the promise of a feast, any feast, stirs something in their hollow stomachs. Back home in Germany, rations grow smaller every week. Here, even prisoners eat better than civilians in Berlin. This realization creates a complicated guilt in Helga's chest. How can she enjoy abundance while her countrymen starve? Is accepting American food a betrayal of the fatherland? Ilsa certainly thinks so. She lectures the younger women about maintaining dignity, about not being seduced by enemy generosity. We are German soldiers, Ilsa says. We do not grovel for scraps from our captors. But they're all hungry, and hunger has a way of overruling ideology. The days leading up to Thanksgiving buzz with unusual energy. The American soldiers decorate the mess hall with paper turkeys and autumn leaves. The kitchen staff works overtime preparing the massive feast. Walter Brown supervises the cooking with military precision, determined to create a meal that honors the holiday properly. Walter takes pride in his work. The kitchen is one of the few places where his race matters less than his skill. He can't change the segregation that defines his life, but he can control the temperature of an oven, the seasoning of a turkey, the texture of mashed potatoes. In the kitchen, he has authority. It's a small power, but it's his. He's aware of how some of the German women look at him. The shock, the disgust, the confusion. He's seen that look before, from white Americans who resent his uniform. But he's also seen something else. The gradual shift from prejudice to grudging respect. Some of the women have started to nod at him in the corridors. Small gestures, but meaningful. Helga is one of them. She's watched Walter work, seen his dedication, his professionalism. It challenges everything she was taught about racial hierarchies. In Germany, the propaganda portrayed black people as subhuman. But here's Walter, competent and dignified, wearing the uniform of a victorious nation. The contradiction gnaws at Helga's certainty. Thanksgiving morning arrives cold and clear. The prisoners wake to the smell of roasting turkey wafting through the barracks. Liesel sits up in her bunk, inhaling deeply. When was the last time she smelled meat cooking? Real meat, not the ersatz rations of wartime Germany. Even Ilsa seems affected, though she hides it behind a mask of stern disapproval. This is psychological manipulation, she reminds the others. They feed us well to break our spirits, to make us forget our duty to the Reich. Do not be fooled. But Helga notices that Ilsa's hands tremble slightly as she buttons her uniform. Everyone's hungry. Everyone's human. Even true believers have stomachs. At 11 o'clock, Dorothy escorts the women to the mess hall. The transformation is remarkable. The usually stark room is decorated with autumn colors. Long tables are set with real plates, not the usual metal trays. There are even cloth napkins. The American soldiers have gone to considerable effort to create something special. Captain Sterling, the camp commandant, stands at the front of the room. He's a lean man in his 40s with silver hair and a stern but fair reputation. He welcomes everyone to the Thanksgiving celebration and delivers a short speech about gratitude, even in difficult times. His words are translated for the German women by an interpreter. Today we set aside our differences, Sterling says. Today we remember that we are all human beings, all capable of sharing a meal together. This is the American way. We do not celebrate by diminishing others. We celebrate by elevating everyone. The German women listen in silence. Some appear moved. Others, like Ilsa, remain stone-faced and skeptical. Helga feels torn between two reactions. Part of her wants to believe Sterling's words. Another part warns her that this is exactly what Ilsa said. Manipulation designed to weaken their resolve. Then the serving begins. The kitchen staff brings out enormous platters of food. Golden brown turkeys. Mountains of mashed potatoes. Bowls of stuffing fragrant with sage and onion. The American soldiers serve themselves first, as is protocol. Then the prisoners are invited to join the line. Helga finds herself standing behind Liesel, watching as each woman receives her portion. The quantities are astonishing. Generous slices of turkey, heaping spoonfuls of potatoes, a ladle of rich gravy, and then, the final item, a quivering cylinder of dark red gelatin scooped from a can. Liesel receives her portion first. She stares down at her plate, specifically at the red substance now sitting next to her turkey. Her face goes pale. Helga leans closer to see what caused such a reaction. The red sauce gleams under the fluorescent lights. It's a deep crimson color, almost purple. Its texture is unnervingly gelatinous, holding the shape of the can it came from, complete with ridges. It looks nothing like any food Helga has ever seen. It looks like congealed blood. Liesel's hand shakes. She looks up at Helga with wide, terrified eyes. "What is this?" she whispers in German. "What have they given us?" The whisper spreads down the line of prisoners. More women receive the red substance on their plates. More faces go pale. Murmurs of alarm ripple through the group. Is this blood? Animal organs? Some kind of American ritual? The propaganda warned them that Americans were barbarians. Is this the proof? Ilse's voice cuts through the confusion. "I told you," she hisses. "This is what they really are. Savages trying to humiliate us. Do not eat it. Maintain your dignity." The mess hall grows tense. The American soldiers notice the prisoners' reactions. Confusion spreads among them too. Why have the German women stopped eating? Why do they look frightened? Dorothy approaches Helga, who seems to be the most composed of the group. "What's wrong?" she asks. "The food is safe. It's the same meal we're all eating." Helga struggles with her limited English. She points at the red gelatin. "This," she manages. "What is this?" "It looks like..." She doesn't have the English word for blood. She makes a gesture, pressing her palm to her chest, then pointing at the red substance. Understanding dawns on Dorothy's face. She almost laughs, but catches herself. These women aren't joking. They're genuinely frightened. She calls over the interpreter. "It's cranberry sauce," Dorothy explains through the translator. "It's made from cranberries. They're a fruit, a berry. It's sweet. It's traditional for Thanksgiving. Every American family eats it with turkey." The German women stare at her with suspicion. A fruit that looks like blood? Impossible. This must be a lie. Ilse's expression hardens into righteous vindication. "You see," she says, "they mock us even as they try to deceive us. They expect us to believe this blood is fruit." The situation teeters on the edge of a genuine incident. Captain Sterling moves toward the commotion. Dorothy raises her hand, signaling that she has it under control. She needs to defuse this quickly before it escalates. Walter Brown has been watching from the kitchen entrance. He understands what's happening. He's seen confusion before, the clash of cultures that creates fear from simple misunderstanding. He makes a decision. Walter walks to the serving line, takes a plate, and loads it with turkey, potatoes, stuffing, and a large portion of cranberry sauce. Then, in full view of everyone, he sits down at the nearest table. He cuts a piece of turkey, takes a generous scoop of the cranberry sauce on his fork and eats it. He chews slowly, deliberately, making sure every German woman can see him. Then he smiles. He takes another bite, and another. He's demonstrating the most basic truth. If the food were dangerous or disgusting, he wouldn't eat it. The mess hall falls silent. Everyone watches Walter's simple act of courage and compassion. A black soldier, subjected to discrimination in his own country, choosing to help enemy prisoners overcome their fear. The irony is profound and not lost on anyone present. Helga watches Walter eat. She sees no deception in his face, no mockery, just a man eating his Thanksgiving dinner. She looks down at her own plate, at the red gelatin she thought was blood. Could it really be fruit? Could they really be telling the truth? She makes her decision. Helga picks up her fork, cuts a small piece of turkey, and adds a tiny bit of the cranberry sauce. She lifts it to her mouth. Every eye in the mess hall is on her. Ilse glares with burning disapproval. Liesel watches with desperate hope. Dorothy holds her breath. Helga eats. The cranberry sauce is nothing like she expected. It's sweet, tart, fruity, complex. The flavor explodes in her mouth, so different from anything she's tasted before. It complements the savory turkey perfectly. It is unmistakably food, delicious food. Helga's face transforms. The fear melts away, replaced by surprise, then relief, then something like joy. She takes another bite, then another. She looks up at Dorothy and nods. "It's good," she says in halting English. "It's very good." That single moment breaks the tension. Liesel tries the cranberry sauce next. Her reaction mirrors Helga's, shock giving way to pleasure. Then another prisoner tries it, and another. Within minutes, the entire group is eating. The crisis averted. Only Ilse refuses. She sits rigidly, eating only the turkey and potatoes, avoiding the cranberry sauce as if it were poison. Her refusal is ideological now, not based on fear. To accept the cranberry sauce would be to accept that she was wrong, that the propaganda lied, that the enemy is more human than she was taught to believe. Ilse cannot accept that. Her entire identity is built on certainty. But around her, the other women are discovering something unexpected. Joy. The simple, uncomplicated joy of a good meal. They eat the turkey, the stuffing, the mashed potatoes swimming in gravy. They try the cranberry sauce again and again, marveling at its strange sweetness. Some even smile. Liesel laughs for the first time since her capture. It's a small, tentative sound, but it's genuine. She looks at Helga with tears in her eyes. "I forgot what it felt like," she whispers in German. To just enjoy something, to not be afraid. Helga squeezes the young woman's hand. "I know," she says. "I forgot too." The meal continues. Dessert arrives, pumpkin pie topped with whipped cream. This too is foreign to the German women, but after the cranberry revelation they're more willing to try. The pie is spiced and smooth, the cream sweet and light. It's wonderful. As the prisoners eat, something shifts in the atmosphere. Conversation begins tentatively. An American soldier compliments one of the German women on her English. She blushes and thanks him. Another soldier asks a prisoner where in Germany she's from. "Berlin," she answers. He nods thoughtfully. His grandmother was from Hamburg, he says. Small connections. Bridging an impossible divide. Dorothy watches this with complex emotions. These women are the enemy. They served the Nazi regime. But they're also just women, far from home, caught in a war that's destroying everything. Can you hate someone while feeding them pumpkin pie? Can you maintain enmity while sharing a holiday? Walter returns to the kitchen, satisfied. His simple act of eating cranberry sauce diffused a crisis. In a different world, he'd be celebrated as a hero. In this world, he'll go back to his segregated quarters and eat his own meal alone. But he helped. That's enough. Captain Sterling observes everything from his position at the head table. He's pleased. The Geneva Convention requires humane treatment of prisoners, but he believes in going beyond the minimum. These women aren't monsters. They're soldiers who lost. Today, they were given a glimpse of what peace might look like. Maybe that will matter. Maybe it won't. But it's worth trying. After the meal, the prisoners return to their barracks. They're full for the first time in months. Some feel guilty about it. How can they enjoy American generosity while Germany suffers? Others, like Helga, are beginning to question everything they were taught. If the propaganda lied about cranberry sauce looking like blood, what else did it lie about? If Americans are supposed to be barbaric gangsters, why are they being treated so well? That night, Helga lies in her bunk, unable to sleep. The Thanksgiving meal sits warmly in her stomach, but her mind churns with doubt. She joined the Red Cross because she wanted to help people. The Nazi Party promised order, prosperity, strength. She believed them. Millions believed them. But now, as a prisoner in enemy hands, she's treated better than she ever imagined. She has food, shelter, medical supplies to work with. She hasn't been tortured or abused. Nobody has violated the Geneva Convention. Meanwhile, back in Germany, she knows the truth. The cities are being bombed. Food is scarce. The Reich that promised eternal victory is losing. And the propaganda that painted Americans as monsters was completely, demonstrably false. Cranberry sauce isn't blood. It's just a sweet fruit preserve. If they lied about something so small, what about the big things? What about the claims of racial superiority? What about the justifications for war? What about the fate of the Jews, the prisoners, the occupied territories? Helga has heard rumors, whispers of terrible things. She always dismissed them as enemy propaganda, but now she wonders. Across the barracks, Ilse lies awake too, but her thoughts are different. She sees the Thanksgiving meal as exactly what she predicted. Psychological warfare. The Americans are trying to break them with kindness. It's insidious and clever. By making the prisoners comfortable, by feeding them well, by treating them humanely, the enemy hopes to destroy their loyalty to Germany. Ilse will not fall for it. She will maintain her discipline, her faith in the Reich, her commitment to the cause, even if she's the only one left who believes. Liesel, the youngest, falls asleep quickly, her stomach full for the first time in memory. She dreams of home, but the dream is confused now. In it, her mother serves Thanksgiving turkey. The categories are blurring. Enemy and friend, American and German, right and wrong. War makes everything complicated. The next day, life in the camp returns to normal. The decorations come down, the work assignments resume, but something has changed. The prisoners talk about the cranberry sauce. They laugh about their initial fear. The story becomes a shared experience, a moment of humanity in the middle of war. Dorothy notices the change. The German women are more relaxed around the American guards. There's less suspicion, more tentative trust. It's not friendship exactly, but it's not pure enmity anymore either. The cranberry sauce incident has become a symbol of something larger, the possibility of understanding, even between enemies. Walter continues his work in the kitchen, largely unnoticed but essential. He knows his role. He knows that after the war, things probably won't change much for him. Segregation will continue. Discrimination will persist. But for now, in this small corner of Texas, he helped bridge a gap. He showed frightened women that their fear was unfounded. That's worth something. Captain Sterling writes in his daily report about the Thanksgiving incident. He describes it as a minor cultural misunderstanding successfully resolved. His superiors in Washington will read it and file it away. It's not important in the grand scheme of the war. It won't change battle outcomes or diplomatic negotiations, but it matters to the 47 women in that camp. It matters to the soldiers who guarded them. It matters because it proves that even in war, even between enemies, humanity can prevail. Weeks pass. Christmas approaches. The German women are told they'll receive packages from the Red Cross. They're allowed to write limited letters home. Censored, but real. The war continues across Europe and the Pacific, brutal and unrelenting. But in this small Texas camp, life has found a strange equilibrium. Helga continues working in the infirmary. She and Captain Morrison develop a professional friendship based on their shared medical knowledge. They discuss techniques, debate treatment protocols, sometimes even joke about difficult patients. Helga's English improves. Her worldview expands. She's not ready to renounce Germany completely, but she's questioning. That's progress. Ilse remains rigid in her beliefs. She refuses to socialize with the Americans. She follows orders but offers nothing beyond the minimum. At night, she writes in a hidden journal, documenting what she sees as the systematic corruption of German prisoners through American manipulation. She plans to report everything when she returns home after Germany's inevitable victory. The fact that victory grows less likely every day doesn't shake her faith. True believers never doubt. Liesel blooms in captivity. Away from the war, away from the constant fear, she discovers she's still young. She learns English quickly. She makes friends with some of the American guards. She even starts to smile regularly. One day, Dorothy catches her singing while hanging laundry. It's an American song, learned from the radio in the mess hall. Liesel doesn't even realize she's doing it. The transformation is complete. In February 1944, news reaches the camp that the Allies have landed at Anzio. The war is turning decisively against Germany. The male prisoners in the adjacent compound grow sullen and defeated. But the women's section maintains its strange peace. They work, they eat, they sleep. They wait for the war to end, uncertain what world will emerge from the ashes. Dorothy gets promoted to lieutenant. She's offered a transfer to a different facility but chooses to stay. She's invested in these women now. She wants to see them through to the end, whatever that end might be. It's personal now, not just professional. One evening in March, as spring begins to warm the Texas air, Helga and Dorothy find themselves alone in the infirmary, reorganizing supplies. They work in comfortable silence for a while. Then Helga speaks. "Thank you," she says in careful English, "for the cranberry sauce day, for showing us we were wrong to be afraid." Dorothy pauses in her work. She looks at Helga, seeing not an enemy, but a woman trying to make sense of an incomprehensible situation. "You're welcome," Dorothy says. "It was just cranberry sauce. Just food." Helga shakes her head. "No," she says. "It was more than food. It was truth. You showed us that what we were told was lies. That changed everything." Dorothy doesn't know how to respond. She's moved by Helga's honesty. They're still technically enemies. Their countries are still at war. But in this moment, they're just two women who have survived something difficult together. That's a kind of victory, too. The war in Europe ends on May 8, 1945. VE Day. The news reaches the camp around noon. The American soldiers celebrate with restrained joy, mindful of the German prisoners who have just learned their nation has surrendered unconditionally. The defeat is total. For the German women, the reaction is mixed. Relief that the killing has stopped. Grief for the nation that no longer exists. Fear about what comes next. What will happen to them now? What will they find when they return home? Does home even exist anymore? Ilse refuses to believe it at first. She insists it's Allied propaganda, another trick. But as the evidence mounts, as more details emerge about Germany's surrender, even she cannot deny reality. She breaks down in her bunk, sobbing with rage and despair. The Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years lasted 12. Everything she believed, everything she sacrificed, was for nothing. Helga comforts her despite their differences. In this moment of collective grief, old divisions seem petty. They're all defeated. They all have to figure out how to live in a world where Germany lost, where the Nazi dream is dead, where everything they knew has been destroyed. Liesel, surprisingly, seems less affected. She's already begun to imagine a future beyond the war. Maybe she'll stay in America. Maybe she'll find work here, start a new life. Going back to Germany means returning to ruins. Here, she has a chance. It's a bitter thought, disloyal in its way, but it's also practical. The young survive by adapting. The repatriation process begins in July. The German prisoners will be returned to Europe in stages, sent to displaced persons camps, then eventually allowed to go home. The camp in Texas will close. The barracks will be dismantled. The guard towers will come down. Everything will return to how it was before the war, except nothing will ever really be the same. On the day before Helga's scheduled departure, Dorothy finds her in the infirmary, packing her few belongings. They stand together awkwardly, unsure how to say goodbye. They've been enemies and colleagues, and in some undefined way, friends. "What will you do?" Dorothy asks. "When you get back?" Helga shrugs. "I don't know. Find my family if they're alive. Find work, if there's any to be found. Try to rebuild, I suppose." She pauses. "What about you?" Dorothy smiles sadly. "Go back to civilian life. Probably become a nurse. Try to forget the war." She laughs without humor, as if we could ever forget. Helga reaches into her bag and pulls out something small. It's a piece of paper folded carefully. She hands it to Dorothy. "I wrote this," she says. "For you. To remember." Dorothy unfolds the paper. It's a letter, written in careful English. It thanks Dorothy for her kindness, for her fairness, for treating the prisoners with dignity. But most of all, it thanks her for the cranberry sauce. For that moment when fear turned to understanding, when enemy became human. Dorothy's eyes water. She pulls Helga into an embrace, breaking every regulation about fraternization with enemy prisoners. But the war is over. The rules don't matter anymore. They're just two women who survived something terrible together. "Take care of yourself," Dorothy whispers. "You too," Helga responds. The next morning, Helga boards a truck that will take her to the train station. Liesel is with her, along with dozens of other prisoners. Ilse is in a different transport group, still refusing to acknowledge that anything good came from their captivity. As the truck pulls away from the camp, Helga looks back one last time. She sees the mess hall where she tasted cranberry sauce for the first time. She sees the infirmary where she worked alongside American doctors. She sees the barracks where she slept, the yard where she walked, the gate where Dorothy stands watching them leave. She raises her hand in farewell. Dorothy waves back. Years later, long after the war, Helga will tell her children about her time as a prisoner in America. She'll tell them about the fear, the confusion, the gradual understanding. And she'll always tell them about Thanksgiving 1943, when she thought cranberry sauce was blood. How that moment of absurd misunderstanding became the turning point. the instant when propaganda met reality, and reality won. She'll explain how a simple fruit preserve taught her that everything she'd been told about the enemy was false, that the Americans weren't barbaric gangsters, but people who celebrated gratitude even in wartime, that a black soldier showed more compassion than her own officers ever had. That kindness, not cruelty, broke her loyalty to a regime built on hate. The cranberry sauce became a symbol. It represented the lies they'd been told and the truth they'd discovered. It was sweet when they expected bitter. It was fruit when they feared blood. It was proof that the world was more complicated than propaganda allowed. And every Thanksgiving after that, wherever she is, whatever circumstances she finds herself in, Helga makes sure to have cranberry sauce with her meal. It reminds her of the day she learned that enemies can become humans, that fear can transform into understanding, that even in the darkest times there's always possibility for grace. If this story of cranberry sauce confusion showed you how fear becomes understanding when enemies share a meal, hit that subscribe button to discover more untold moments from history that changed everything. Drop a like if you never knew Thanksgiving caused an international incident in a Texas POW camp, and tell us in the comments, what's the strangest food you've ever been afraid to try? Your story might be featured in our next video. Until then, remember that sometimes the greatest battles aren't won with weapons but with compassion, patience, and yes, even cranberry sauce. See you in the next one.